So it's almost been 12 years since my first bike packing trip, tackling the whole Colorado Trail from Denver to Durango. And it was a pretty ambitious goal for a first trip. Still, this experience certainly changed my life, likely more than anything else I had done to this point. I made a ton of mistakes and was likely not ready for a trip this long. So in this video, I'm going to actually share what I learned from this trip 12 years ago and how or if I actually do it differently today. Let's do it. So this is Mike Barron, one of my good buddies, a common bike packing friend, and an old college roommate of mine. We were young and really eager to do something super epic. So in 2012, we decided to bike the Colorado Trail. Mike had some experience bike packing before, but mostly of the touring variety on paved surfaces. Being my first time, I was hopeful that my cycling and backpacking skills would make things a little easier. So it took us 10 days to travel from Denver to Durango, and well, this is what I learned. This might sound obvious, but the Colorado Trail is likely not the smartest first bike packing trip. I learned a lot along the way, but I actually think I might have learned too much. While I loved this experience, I think if I had done more prep or gone on a shorter trip or two beforehand, I likely would have been better prepared for this 10-day epic. Longer point-to-point routes are much more logistically challenging. Not only are you trying to figure out travel to and from, but daily mileage with a loaded bike on a really challenging Colorado Trail was certainly an eye-opening experience. Understanding the weather and how it might affect our time on the bike and how much food to pack, how much water to bring. These were all learned along this trip. One super helpful thing was my backpacking background made the overall camping logistics pretty straightforward. But the first few days, while absolutely stunning, were definitely eye-opening. All right, so before we move any further, I just want to let everybody know that this video is supported in part by Salsa Cycles. Salsa is adventure by bike. Salsa offers a range of mountain bikes, gravel bikes, all-road bikes, and fat tire bikes, all thoughtfully designed to enrich and enhance your cycling experience. Salsa truly understands the transformative nature of adventure by bike. So to discover more about their products, you can visit this card in the top right corner or also find a link in the description below. One learning experience that affected my attitude, likely more than anything, was my sore bottom. Yeah. My buddy Mike and I didn't utilize all of the space on our bikes because investing in something like a frame bag is hard without actually trying the activity first. It was also nice not to have all of the weight on the bike because we knew we had a lot of hike-a-bike ahead of us. But in the end, the backpacks, yeah, they crushed our butts. Mike and I had decent-sized backpacks, both carrying 3 liters of water, repair kits, food, and some odds and ends here and there. The heavier our backpacks were, the more pressure on our sit bones, which resulted in more chafing. And despite having a comfortable full suspension bike for this trip, the single track and rough terrain definitely put us in a world of hurt by the end of day 3. We used chamois cream to help with that, something that I actually no longer use due to the stretching of the chamois when you use that cream, in the end making for a worse experience. But that experience made me rethink my packing as a whole. I would much rather have weight on my bike and keep everything off my back because of that. That said, as someone who captures moments with my camera for work, I usually have a larger camera, a GoPro, camera gear in a hip pack, but usually something relatively small, so I'm not enticed to keep adding things to that hip pack. This trip was actually the last time I used my main triangle of my bike for just a water bottle. I did a good job of actually using my space on the rest of the bike well, but as you can see, the frame space was not utilized wisely. In general, the front triangle space holds weight really well and usually offers decent space depending on the bike, of course. So now I either add a wedge frame bag or a custom frame bag for front triangles, especially on full suspension bikes, as few off-the-shelf options fit those bikes. I've also started utilizing my down tube more and added extra accessory pocket bags to, say, my handlebar bag and so on. Unlike 12 years ago, we are really lucky to have so many unique bike packing carrying solutions. So I remember trying to decide what goes where, and it really kind of stressed me out before the trip. But once I actually got out there, I figured out what worked and what didn't for me. The moral of the story here is don't waste your mental energy trying to think about where things go on your bike before your trip. You will certainly figure out the weight distribution and a system that works for you once you get out there. For me, I've learned that I like to keep most of my sleep system in a rear bag or a seat pack with layers and some food in the front, stove, water, tools, and food in my frame bag, and more food in a top tube bag. But there's truly no right or wrong way to pack your bike, but rather your way. So one of my biggest realizations out there was how simple bike packing is and how little you actually need to have a good time. It made me realize the simple pleasures of traveling with only the essentials. Bike packing is a lesson in self-sustainability. The prep is a little daunting, but it's liberating once you're out there. Now, it's super easy to get caught up in the gear aspect side of things or the camping luxuries. I know because I do this from time to time. But when I look back at this trip in particular, I definitely realized that we only brought things that we used during our 10-day trip and really nothing more. And that's pretty awesome. Back in 2012, I owned one bike, and it was the Trek Fuel EX. It was a full suspension bike with 69.5-degree head tube angle, 26-inch wheels, a 3x10 Shimano XT drivetrain, and no dropper post. This bike, however, was likely better than most for a route like the Colorado Trail at the time, but it certainly was not designed to be a bike packing bike. I just used what I had and it worked. Now, obviously things have changed in the bike world. Geometry, bike packing specific features, and of course components. But I've bike packed the Colorado Trail, I think, 5 times now, and I was only silly enough to do it once on a hardtail, even though hardtails are certainly much easier to pack. But I guess looking back, the use of 26-inch wheeled bike without a dropper post is a reminder that even with all of this tech, you will likely be okay on the bike you have, especially if you are simply dipping your toes into bike packing for the first time. The latest and greatest is certainly not necessary. So through our 10-day trip, we were pretty lucky. We didn't have too many issues, but we did have some, which certainly made us realize that we should have done maybe a better job of testing or bringing specific repair items. So Mike's tire was in really rough shape by the end of the trip, no longer actually holding air. He would pump it up a bunch, but then a few hours later, the tire would be flat. We didn't have extra sealant, so he had to actually put a tube in on the last day. Now I always bring extra sealant. Another thing we both realized after a healthy dose of storms the first few days was that our bike packing bags were not waterproof, and almost all of our gear was actually wet. We even stopped at one point midday to take shelter from a big storm to wait out the rain. So once we got into Buena Vista, we actually purchased a dry bag and carried some trash bags to help keep things dry for the rest of the trip. And that worked actually really well for us. I now like to actually have one specific bag on my bike that is waterproof or really close to, and I still use trash bags to keep moisture out in a pinch. In fact, I used this last month in Arizona. Ever since I was a backpacker, I was always into sharing gear because, well, it reduces weight and it saves space. So when I went on this trip, both Mike and I agreed that we would share gear, share stoves, share a tent, and share as much gear as possible. This made my first bike packing experience great. Our bikes were light-ish and handled pretty well. And as a bonus, we rented this tent from our local university, so we actually didn't have to buy one, which which ended up saving us quite a bit of money. So I ended up going away from this as I got more experience and got a little bit lighter weight gear that packed down well. However, I still share gear on specific trips, and it's really a great way to go, especially when you and your group are on the same page and willing to share items. We didn't bring bike lights, nor did we plan on riding at night on this trip. But this was the first trip of many where I have not planned on riding at night, but had to get the headlamp out. So a few factors go into riding at night, such as the specific mileage you might want to cover in a day, simply trying to get to a particular campsite, or getting stopped due to a mechanical during the day. I realize the importance of a headlamp because that's what I use when darkness sets in, whether I'm at camp or still on the bike. I've invested in some headlamps over the years that are reliable and come with enough brightness so that I can bike with relative speed at night, usually in the 400 plus lumen range. So I look back at these photos from 12 years ago, and while they may not be great, they've created memories that reminded me of how incredible this journey was. Though I do wish I captured more from this trip, I learned my lesson, and now I take a lot of snaps that someday I'll be able to share with my children to inspire them. I love that I'm able to share my experiences with you, and I certainly urge you all to do the same. We may not always be able to go out and bike pack, but we likely have time to peek at some photos or a video to relive a memory. Being my first bike packing trip, it truly was an honor doing it with a good buddy. From time to time, I send him photos about the trip, and we reminisce about this trip when we're together. A few years after this trip, I stopped bike packing with friends because ultra racing got in the way, which was a real bummer. But now that I quit doing that, I get to live these experiences with others. Bike packing, not even just with friends, but like-minded individuals, is always more fun. All right, so that about does it. So I'd love to hear about one learning experience that you all had from your first bikepacking trip. And if you haven't gone yet, let us know what's holding you up. Let us know in the comment section below. As always, thank you all so much for watching. And if you like what you saw in this video and want to see more like it, consider hitting that subscribe button and notification bell. And if you want to support us a little bit more, you can do so by signing up for the Bikepacking Collective. The Bikepacking Collective offers a lot of perks, including industry discounts, monthly giveaways, and the twice yearly Bikepacking Journal. So to learn a little bit more about the Bikepacking Collective, you can click on the card in the top right corner, or also follow the link in the description below. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, pedal further.